host, Christene Marie, and on this Saturday, we are going to be talking about joy. And this topic is one that probably might be one of my very favorite topics to discuss. Frankly, it's one that a lot of us, well, actually, every single one of us has the opportunity to engage with. It's something that every single one of us has the power to choose and take hold of. And it's also something a lot of us don't realize the full power that we do have in relationship to joy, especially when it seems like everything is against us and everything seems to be going not our way. And we have this opportunity on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day, to decide, what will we choose? Will we choose joy? Will we choose misery? And so tonight we're going to talk about how we can choose joy on purpose and make our lives and craft our lives and design our lives so that joy is not even just a destination, but it's something that we can engage with in the moment by moment. We talk about, the process, the stimulus and the response, and then in between lies choice, according to Viktor Frankl. So in between stimulus and response is choice. And in so much of, I actually dove into this last year. And as I was really leaning into, actually, this was a different topic I was leaning into that reminded me of this quote by Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response is choice. I was really leaning into, there's a verse where it's effectively about counting every single trial and thing that we might encounter as joy. And I was really sitting with that word trial, and I was like, what does that really mean? What's the real meaning behind that word? Because for so many of us who grew up hearing certain things and being taught and trained on certain matters, it's kind of easy to just spout off different sayings. And, we heard our parents say it. We heard it from the pulpit. We heard it from peers. And so when we actually really sit with the integrity and the meaning of a phrase, leaning into it, man, there's a lot there. And so I decided to kind of pursue this concept of this word, count every trial as joy. And so I was exploring the origin of that word trial. And when I learned is that effectively that word trial is effectively the process. View the process and count it as joy. And so in so many ways, what we're talking about tonight isn't that we're in this pursuit of something outside of us, some destination, some outcome that we're fighting for, but that joy is actually tethered to us at every step of the journey, at every step of the process, as we move through life, as we experience life. And we really come to, man, it's like everything that we engage with externally, joy is actually the internal state of our being. So joy is no longer outside of us, but it's something within us. And so to that point, when we talk about how do we choose joy with intention, on purpose, even when life feels difficult, we actually have to back up in terms of what do we actually mean when we talk about the pursuit of joy. It's about the internal choice that we make about our internal state of being when everything external might actually reflect something different. And a lot of times what's happening externally, we don't have a ton of control over, to an extent, depending on what that is happening in your life. But we have full power of choice. To Viktor Frankl's point, between stimulus and response is choice, therein lies the process, therein lies the cultivation, therein lies the real decision that we make about the internal state that is going to impact the response, thus the external manifestation. So we have full autonomy and full power over the inner decision that we then kind of externally reflect. And when we consider this, later on in Man's Search for Meaning, this is where the first quote came from, between stimulus and response is choice. He also says they can strip away every bit of human freedom accept, they cannot strip away or steal man's power to choose. And that is the ultimate greatest freedom. So, this whole conversation around joy actually resides in, what are you choosing for yourself? What are you choosing for your inner life? What are you choosing? Yes, for your external life, but it all is a reflection of our inner being and who we choose to be on the inside. So this is what we're going to be talking about tonight. And I'm just, going to take my coat off and get cozy. For those of you who have been joining me the last couple of nights, I have been filming later in the evening than I expected. Come the new year, I'm actually going to be on a much more rigid routine with the Knowing Show. And I'm going to be showing up every single evening at the same time, even with guests. And so we'll see how it goes. I think some of them will be live and some of them will be pre-recorded, just so that we can get guests on, even if it's, 8 o'clock. We're going live every night, let's say Eastern, but we really want to have an amazing guest who's only available earlier in the day at like 12. So we'll be pre-recording and going live, which I'm excited for. I think the consistency will be good. I think that if we really want to create impact with this show, I think that there needs to be consistency. So with all of that, as we are in the holiday season and in the holiday spirit, things are a little bit strange on my end. For example, I am in a hotel right now. I'm in a hotel through Tuesday. I actually sublet my apartment to someone, and that started a couple days ago. So I am homeless. But anyway, so for those of you who have joined me the last couple of nights, we've gotten ready for bed together. So coming back to our topic about choosing joy, I think that the whole realization that this conversation around joy actually has a lot more to do with our choice, that was really, really helpful, because in so many ways we actually can get distracted and think that we're talking about this ethereal pursuit of something outside and something external, rather than realizing, one, it is entirely hinging on our own choice and thus our own power. Like, we have the ability to decide. And I want to lean into that. What are the obstacles that could prevent us from this choice, from choosing joy? And there's a couple of things for me specifically, a couple different examples, a couple different aspects that have really made an impact in my life that I really had to hurdle. And one of those was, there's a fear around choosing joy. It's actually very vulnerable to lean into joy and to seek it and pursue it and hope for it. There's something around this that is really important for us to identify, especially as we come close to the holiday seasons. Y'all, we have something presented to us. Almost consider every single moment around Christmas and New Year's, we have akin to like what's presented on a silver platter. We have people, we have moments, we have potential for memories, we have traditions, we have a whole slew of different, like a buffet of options, let's say. And with the people, we've got the ones that we really, really love. We've got the people that sometimes we try to avoid, and we've got all these different scenarios. And with that, all of the way that we could engage comes down to this decision of choice. What do we actually want to experience in each one of those regards? In the tradition, what do I want to experience in that regard? With my grandmother, who and what do I want to experience in that? So this whole question of choosing actually comes down even further. So we talk about the pursuit of joy, and then when we get even closer, it's like, oh, well, okay, I get to choose. I have full power. And then even beyond that, kind of narrowing down on the funnel, it's, well, what do you want? And when we think about the fear of choosing joy, if I'm going into this, let's say, tradition with, I'll make it personal. My family, on Christmas Eve, we will watch the Ebenezer Scrooge with George C. Scott. That's the one that we watch when we'll make crab cakes. And it's been a special tradition for a decade. And Levi, I just saw your comment. It's good to see you, my friend. I'm excited for you to come on the show. I love this tradition. It's so fun and so special. So with this tradition coming up, I have the ability to choose around how do I want that experience to go for myself. Now, here's the thing. This is where that vulnerability kicks in. Let's say I also am aware that there's going to be other people there. It's not just my immediate family. I've got in-laws coming. I've got maybe something beforehand, like an event that I might need to go to for networking. And I'm going to this Christmas Eve tradition to experience with my family. There's something around really hoping that it turns out exactly what it is and what it always has been. Even though now this year, there are now 5 nieces and nephews, 4 of which are under 4. There is no way that this Christmas Eve is going to look and sound and feel like probably all the other Christmas Eves in the past. So there's a reality to this being so different. Even though it's a tradition, it's not going to hold the integrity of what it always has in the past. So then the question is, okay, well, what do I want it to look like? And y'all, here's the thing. If we actually don't identify what we want in this regard, there's a lot of danger there because our subconscious expectations are going to be looking for it to look and sound and feel like the past. There are hardly any similar conditions and environmental factors going into this evening than in the past, other than the same activities. And when you think about, what effectively makes for the tradition, it really is the activity. It's not necessarily the same house, the same people, same times. You know what I mean? Like so much changes. And so the more variables that weigh in on what could change, the more likelihood there is that it will not actually fulfill on the subconscious expectation that we have. So when we're looking ahead at something that could very well bring us joy, it's really important that we take a moment to pause and express. But first we have to kind of know, what are my subconscious expectations? And then let me kind of bring them to bear. The definition of emotional intelligence is the ability to understand and be aware of and express one's own emotions. And so many times our expectations have an emotion tied to them. So if we're trying to suppress our emotions, we're also suppressing our expectations. Then we can never prepare for them and actually create any kind of safeguard or protection mechanism if our expectations are not met. So long as we suppress emotions, we're suppressing expectations, and nobody is served in that way. We show up with unknown expectations for an event, for a person, for an experience. And because we haven't taken the time to do our work, that's our responsibility. The first half of emotional intelligence is entirely on us to become aware of, to understand, and then convey our emotions and subsequently expectations. But if we're not doing that, there is no way that everything that flows thereafter is going to be able to be really life-giving for ourselves and those around us. So when we kind of take this whole funnel of joy, joy is at the very top of the funnel, but then as you get more and more closer in, let's say, joy is predicated on what we choose, and what we choose is predicated on what we want. And so often what we want actually has to do with actually bringing it into conscious awareness. We're not going to know what we want. We're not going to know what those expectations are if we don't take the time to awaken the emotion associated with what we want. So this is where the first part of emotional intelligence really is important, to be able to become aware of them to begin with. So this example of me showing up to Christmas Eve dinner, and I know that nothing is going to look or sound or feel the same other than maybe the activity of what we're doing. Then now that I'm aware of what my expectation is, that I want it to sound and feel and look the same, and it's probably not going to. There's now a disconnect. So what do I do then? Do I just throw it all to the wind and say, well, it's not going to be the same, let me throw up my hands and just quit? Honestly, there's a lot of people who do that. And I think you've probably experienced it just like I have for ourselves, when we've thrown out the baby with the bathwater and thrown in the towel of just like, well, what's the point in being excited? What's the point in caring? It's not going to be the same. Or what's the point? They're not going to be there, so why even try? There's this hopelessness that can be associated when our expectations, we kind of can predict that they're not going to be met, rather than, okay, let's adjust the expectation. Let's alter it a little bit and really look at the reality of what it probably will be. This is where it's actually super important. This is not just in this case, but in most scenarios. When we have a fear in our mind, we actually should play it all the way through to the worst case scenario. And then when we play out our fear, and then we look and say, oh, it's actually not all that scary, it's not all that bad. It's like somebody who has to go and do a public speaking gig and they've never public spoken before and they're terrified. Play out the whole thing. You fall on your face. That sucks. Nobody wants that. But that's really the worst that can happen? That's really not all that bad. And suddenly, when you pull fear into the limelight and you shine the spotlight on fear, it starts to not have as much control over us. Suddenly, it's not so scary because it's no longer in the dark. So, by way of exposing even our subconscious expectations, we then have the ability to craft new ones and play. But in order to do that, we actually have to play it all the way through. What happens if my expectations aren't met? Because they probably won't be, because there's so many external factors that the ability for this to be fulfilled on, and for my joy as I've defined it at first, to be fulfilled on, so much of that has changed. So I'm actually operating in kind of a faulty foundation unless I really shine a spotlight and bring my expectations into awareness. And then, okay, so once I actually shine the spotlight on whatever the fear is, because the fear that I have regarding this scenario around Christmas is that I'm going to be disappointed. And I probably will end up, maybe, I don't know, I'm trying to even think of like, what's the worst case scenario? And I think that that's the thing. When we actually start sitting with it, is that actually the worst case scenario, that I'll be disappointed? That's really not all that bad. But y'all, if we don't bring the fear into the spotlight, fear is going to be the driving force that prevents us from being able to enter into the moment, rather than, all right, I actually do want to enjoy this Christmas Eve. I know it's going to look different, so let me set the expectation. My new expectation is that there will probably be crying kids. We probably all won't actually be sitting at the table. And that's all right. I'm glad for those who can be there. And I've been reading this book called Letting Go by David Hawkins, and he talks about effectively being able to level up. He likens emotions to numerical values. So he'll assign a number set to emotional, he calls it frequencies, but really emotions. So if I am at this level of ego, that's, I think, like 175 or something. But then if I get to the level of courage, I'm at 200. And then if I get to the level of peace, I'm at 550. So it's effectively leveling up emotionally. So in order to kind of let go of controlling what's going to happen around me that Christmas Eve, I also let go of everyone else fitting into my plans and my expectations of what will constitute a perfect night. So the very first thing that can really get in our way when it comes to choosing joy is fear and vulnerability of, but what if it doesn't come true? So if we shine the spotlight on our subconscious expectations, play out the worst case scenario, then fear loses its power, and then we can kind of get to the next blockade in us. So first is fear and the vulnerability of that joy of what could happen if it doesn't come true. And then another block to the choice and pursuit of joy is, well, what happens if other people come and ruin it? So there's another element there, that this concept of letting go really, really lets us to lets other people off the hook. And it really gives us freedom to just experience it and allow for it to be different than even what we have kind of reframed our expectation as. And in the reframing of expectation, it actually is no longer black and white. So our subconscious expectation is very dogmatic. It's very much so within this frame and in this box of this is how it has to look or else, right? And then the fear kicks in. But as we reframe the expectation, as we play the fear all the way through, as we let go of other people and the way that they might contribute to my experience, all of a sudden the box, like the edges of the box seem to fade and the lid comes off. And it's just now kind of a malleable experience that we all get to have. There's now more gray. And this is what's fun is that when black and white is gone, all of a sudden the gray also allows for color to emerge. You know, now there's pink and yellow and it's vibrant, and it might not look at all like how it did in the past, but never again will we experience this type of environment with these set of people. And that's the beauty, y'all, of every single day. This is like a core fundamental belief and value that I hold. Every single day is a unique opportunity. Never again do we get today. And when we really start living that way, it changes everything from the people that we encounter, from the family events that we go and experience. You know, there's something really beautiful about tradition. There's something so magical about maintaining the habits and routines of our lives and the year over year annual type of gatherings. But as new babies come in, and frankly, as like partners leave and come and go, there's a reality there that is really sad. And also, when we do let go and we just kind of allow it to be what it is, there's a lot of color there too. You know, I never expected ever to not be married when I married my husband. You know, that it would have been what, 11 years, I think. This would have been our 12th Christmas. And I never imagined that I wouldn't be with him. But there's so much color. Even tonight, I was at my sister's house and we were all three standing around the piano singing Christmas carols. And my sister and I were harmonizing, and it just sounded lovely while my other sister played. And it was so special and it was so rich. But y'all, we have to choose that. We have to choose to create beauty. So the next part, so the number one kind of block to choosing joy is fear and the vulnerability of, well, what could happen? The second is, well, what if other people mess it up? And then third, I think that there's something really, really, there's something like deep in our core. It's like, well, what if I mess it up? What if I, by way of no longer operating in my box, when I'm not operating out of performance or perfection or on autopilot, what happens then? And y'all, I've held that as a real fear for a long time. You know, what happens if I ruin it, if I'm too big, too loud, or too much? You know, those old narratives that other people maybe said about me or to me throughout my life. And so if we haven't come to our own ability to, you know, talk about leveling up emotionally, if we can't let ourselves operate in freedom and move from our own box. I think of it not even as a box. You know, I think we actually can kind of put other people in a box and put the environment in a box, but I actually think we can put ourselves in a cage. Like literally we hand the key to somebody else, or maybe we even hold on to the key the whole time, but we're people pleasing. We're trying to be perfect. We're performing. I was speaking to a mom the other day and she was like, you know, it's up to me to make a magical Christmas. That is so much pressure to put on you. And going back to that second reason that can kind of prohibit joy, that's a lot of pressure to put on other people. What happens if your kids get sick? They're actually preventing your ability to fulfill on what you're self-inflicting on you. You're choosing perfection over choosing presence. And when I say presence, I mean we can't actually be fully here and now in this moment if we're thinking 10 seconds, 30 minutes, 30 days ahead. If we're trying to make it perfect, then we're constantly living in some form of the future. And we're usually driven by the past. Okay, this is what we did in the past. We've got to do it again because that's what's perfect. So really, we're living either in the past or in the future. The presence is really what gives us freedom to break from our cage that we've put ourselves in by pressure, performance, perfection, and also frees other people from existing in the box that's black and white. This is how you should act. This is how you should exist. And usually the same narratives of you should are the same ones that we're applying to ourselves. I should. So when we talk about letting other people go, consequently, that's also the third thing that really allows us to have freedom to pursue joy and choose joy, is to let go of our own standard of perfection. Because when we really think about that, who gave that to us? You know, we don't actually truly want that. I was teaching a workshop a couple weeks ago, for a community. A lot of what I'm starting to do with knowing is to actually go to other communities and talk to their groups, and it's just been so meaningful and so fun. And I was doing a workshop with a mastermind, and I had all of them, identify the key areas in their life: financially, personally, physically, relationally, professionally. They gave it a current ranking. They identified what their target number is. So if they're at a 7, they want to get to a 10. Well, what are they currently doing now that's holding them back? What does 10 look like? What's their target? What do they want? And then I asked them, after they'd completed all of this, I asked them to go back and revisit every single point and analyze, is what you want, is your current target that you've identified, your target for yourself professionally, your target for yourself relationally, what you have identified as a 10 in that category. Did you give that definition, or did someone else assign that meaning? Are you living what someone else deems as success in your life? Or have you intentionally crafted your own definition of success in every single category of your life? And what every single person found in that exercise was that every single one of them was adhering to metrics of success defined or inherited by their parents, by colleagues. This is one of the dangers. I love a good mastermind. This is one of the dangers of going into a mastermind room, is that you can be just infiltrated with what everyone else is doing, that you can get distracted, you can get off focus, and sometimes you can even leave behind some of the things that have been working for you, that you actually really, really loved, that have driven success so far. So with this whole conversation, when we start kind of moving up our own energetic, emotional levels, and I really mean that. When I say emotional, energetic levels, it's like, okay, what does that mean? It's when someone comes up to you and they're so full of energy, so full of life. There's an energy there, right? That's so notable. That's a demarcating experience versus most other people that are a little bit bland, let's say, that just don't have much to offer, or even still someone who's not just neutral, but they're actually at a lower energy level, someone whose shoulders are slumped over and they're actually in shame. And shame is the lowest emotional frequency. They're like, hi, I'm Christine. Nice to meet you. And they won't really look you in the eye. Their shoulders are slumped. They're kind of hunched. You can totally sense that energy versus somebody whose shoulders back. Hi, I'm Christine. It's so good to meet you. This is who I am. Let's go. There's an energy there. There's an excitement. There's frankly, what it does is that it is a mirror for you of like, oh, well, how am I showing up? Am I able to match that? Or is that kind of, am I like, oh, I was down here, so either I need to level up, or how do I actually want to exist in this moment? So to that point, for us to be able to choose joy, we have to consider this is number 4, in terms of what can kind of prevent us from being able to choose joy, is that we don't have the clarity around what we want our baseline to be. What do we want our modus operandi to be? What are the real values guiding me? So, number 1, again, fear and the vulnerability of joy that can prevent us from choosing joy. 2, it's the box that we put other people in that they're not liberated from, and then we control them. 3rd, we control ourselves and put ourselves in the cage of performance and perfection. And then 4th, y'all, this is huge. We don't even know. We don't even know what we want. And so the question is, do you even want joy in your life? Do you actually want that to be something you pursue? And I really, please answer this question tonight. Please think on this, sleep on it, because we get what we want. We really, really do. There's a self-fulfilling prophecy so often when we've spoken things out in our mind, when we've uttered it to other people, when we write it in our journal, that thing is probably bound to happen. And if we're speaking out the fear, if we're speaking out all these things that we don't want, but we're kind of talking about it a lot and talk about emotional energy, we're putting emotional energy into all these negative things. What do you expect is going to happen? I have very clear people and topics that I do not allow mental space and energy to go towards. So just like when we consider what are our values, what's the antithesis of that? What do you choose to dwell on and think on, and what do you choose not to? We need to know both. It's like in marketing, who's your customer, who's not your customer, who's your unideal. So we need to get clear on what is the ideal for our life. Who do we want to be? How do we want to live? What experience do we want to shape and cultivate for ourselves? Because we have the power to choose. If Viktor Frankl, someone in a concentration camp, can say that he has the power to choose his internal state, then we surely do too. So then the question is, well, what do you want? And y'all, I love joy. I really do. I wake up every morning and man, it's like, okay, this is how I want to exist. One morning I woke up and the first thing that came to mind, I was like, okay, if I was in a play right now and I was being the role of someone who is thankful, how does that person exist today? And it was just a good thought exercise. What is the role and the persona of the person that you want to be? Are they thankful? Are they present? Are they a workaholic? Are they able to give emotional bandwidth to their kids, or are they emotionally spent after work? Because the answers to those questions have to then inform the actions that we take and the manner in which we live our lives. There is so often a disparity between beliefs and behaviors. So if we want to bring those two together and see clarity and have continuity in how we show up and who we are, then we have to analyze first and chiefly, what are the beliefs that I say I hold? And so, one of those exercises that I did was I wrote my eulogy when I turned 30. Such a good exercise. A couple others are going through every single one of those key areas of my life, financially, relationally, professionally. And I write my current target state of like, well, what do I want that to look like, even just this year, because that's going to evolve. I'm going to change on a professional level as I grow, as I evolve as a leader. So this year, 2026, what does success actually look like for me? And what are the steps and what are the key KPIs, the key performance indicators that will measure whether I'm on the pathway or not? This is really, really important. So there's just so many different directions we can go with this. But December 18th, I'll be hosting a workshop. It's free. If you want to join, just send me a direct message. We're going to be diving deeper into this of like really setting our targets for 2026. And y'all, this is so important. This is so important that we take the time and really craft with intention the life that we want to live. So to this question of how do we choose joy? Well, do you even want it in the first place? So I've just talked about 4 different things and obstacles, I guess you could say, blockades on the pathway to choosing joy that really can make life difficult to allow for us to choose it. And it's not even just life. A lot of times it's the internal blocks, right? But practically speaking, what are some positive things we can do that would really propel us forward? For me, my early morning, the second I wake up, I do not touch this thing until my routine is done. And I have a very clear morning routine. And y'all, this has to be possible regardless of what time you wake up in the morning. So if it takes 30 minutes to do your routine or 2 hours, so I like to afford myself 2 hours in the morning, ideally more than that. And really it's kind of extreme because I know that if I do not take the time in the morning to do what I know I should do, to do what I feel called to do my one thing, like Gary Keller and Jay Papasan wrote in their book, The One Thing. What's the lead domino? That's the concept of their book. What's the lead domino that if you do that one thing, everything else in the day, at least you did that one thing and you're on the trajectory towards success. So my morning is shaped so that this doesn't have a say before the world gets a say in my day, before any meetings, before any external noise comes in and kind of convolutes the haven of peace and the haven of creativity too. Because the second we start dialing into external, the second we start hearing from other people, it's almost like the integrity of our own creativity gets diluted. And then everything that we're hearing and seeing, well, it's all known. We have no ability then to really continue the deep access to the internal part of us to then create something new. Something new is consequently unknown because it's never existed. So if we're only engaging with what's known by what's produced by other people, there's never going to be something genuine that we truly create. And I'm talking about creativity beyond business. It could be writing, it could be baking, it could be really most anything that really lights you up and gives you joy and is the one thing. I would love to charge you and me both for 2026 to be more creators than consumers. We have this time, 24 hours in a day. We all have it. So how do you choose to use that time? How do you want to live? So number one, go ahead and create time in the morning for you to complete your habits. And what my habits are is that I have my vertical alignment time. And for anyone who wants to, go ahead and go to verticalalignment.com, and there's 21 free days of alignments that I created for you all over my birthday. This morning practice has been so, oh my gosh, it's changed my life. Verticalalignment.com, 21 days of free alignments. And it's just every morning you take this email and move through the prompt. And really, it's helping you get to know yourself deeper. So that's kind of the first part of my day, is going inward. And then I'll do my morning workout, and then I'll do my one thing. What's up for the day? What's my daily task? What's my daily focus? Joe Ingram, I just saw you on Instagram. You have the same bow in your hair. I'm sure you look very pretty. So that's my morning. My morning is sacred. And y'all, what's so freeing is that as I don't look at this thing, man, my emotions, I wake up happy, which is I'm so grateful for, because I know a lot of people don't have that. But I also would be curious to see if maybe your emotional frequency changes if you stop reaching for your phone first thing. I think we get to self-induce our own emotional state. We get to choose that. And so if my value is joy, I'm actually going to feed my mind, my soul, and my spirit good things in the morning that are positive, that are uplifting, being thankful, and reminding myself of how good my life is, how good God is, how even though I went through hell at various points in my life, I'm so grateful for where I am today. There's so many points that we get to feed ourselves. In the morning, we're feeding ourselves through our mind, through our soul, through our spirit, by what we read, what our inputs are, even journaling. Like, we get to self-perpetuate our own dopamine hits by focusing on gratitude. And there's other aspects that self-perpetuate dopamine too. Go work out. That's number 2. So vertical alignment, what are you feeding your mind, soul, spirit? And then 2, go work out and actually increase the dopamine in your body by moving. We were made to move. So this challenge of be a creator, not a consumer, actually considering what were we created to, what was our life created to be? Well, definitely not sheltered away from the sun. The sun is really, really important. So that's another thing that I do between like 7:30 and 8:30 or 9 every morning, is I actually just sit outside in the sun for 10 minutes. I feel like I'm soaking in vitamins. That's what it feels like. So vertical alignment first thing, feeding my body, mind, soul, spirit. 2, exercising. 3, sitting in the sun. Each one of those sets my circadian rhythm, my mental state, my physical state to one that's effectively aligned. That I have chosen my morning. And frankly, y'all, there's something about the autonomy of choice that is so critical. There's a quote, I actually have it in my book, Knowing, that talks about the need, like the desperate need for autonomy in a child. They really start acting out if they don't feel like they're listened to, if they don't feel like they're respected. And y'all, that doesn't change when we enter adulthood. In fact, that probably gets worse. So for all that to say, y'all, we really need to be taking real radical responsibility for our lives. Who do we want to be? And is joy even a value that you hold? because it might not be. Maybe you want peace. Peace is a value I hold too. But each one of those practices, frankly, I think joy is a byproduct of peace, and peace is a byproduct of joy. I think that they're actually very entwined together. Levi on Facebook made a comment. He said, "You're a believer." And I really do believe in God. I really love God. It's a really personal thing for me in some ways, because in the darkest night of the soul, and I've heard a lot of people, it's like when they are just utterly broken, it's wild how in the broken places and in the broken parts you experience hope. It's like the veil thins when you're in that amount of pain. I experienced it with my sister when her husband was killed and she had her 3-week-old baby girl. It was like the heaven parted and God came and met her. And even now I get chills thinking about it, And so this is what's fun, is that it's not just in the pain that we experience hope, but man, is there hope right now, even more so. And so remembering the core anchors that when we are going through hell, like literally in the darkest days, us doing this work right now of training our mind, our body, our soul to respond to us, we are the masters. The body is not the master. Y'all, men coming back from Vietnam, they were analyzed by Bessel van der Kolk, who was a psychiatrist, and he coined the term post-traumatic stress disorder. Up until the 80s, I think it was, that wasn't a thing. People were being put in mental institutions because people didn't understand the outbursts that their physical body was having, because they didn't understand that they were no longer in those traumatic situations. The body kept the score of wars at Vietnam and of course, centuries past, and they didn't understand. So the more that we do the work that is knowing and going inward and understanding all the other conversations we've had on the Knowing Show about moving through the knowing framework, and actually going and doing the work to who do I want to be, and understanding the past and how that shows up in the present, we slowly get to be the ones who are at the helm of the ship guiding us forward. And our body comes into submission under us. Our mind comes into submission under us, even our health. There is literally science that shows that if you actually have cultivated your mind and your body to such a point, you really can speak out what it is that you choose for your body. It's yours. And isn't that a cool thing? We actually get to choose the health and wellness of our being. The question is, do we want that? Do we want to be healthy? Because y'all, there is an addiction to negativity. That's another thing that's been scientifically proven. Like literally watching MR and what is it? I guess I forget the actual scan. They're watching brain activity by negative stimuli. And the brain is firing really high because the brain wants to be in this kind of negative survival primal state. Our body is kind of programmed for that survival instinct: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So we have to be proactive to train it to move away from that and recognize what a blessing that we're sitting here with a laptop in front of us in the comfort of our home. No one's chasing us. We have to program our body that that's the case and bring it to stasis so that we can actually become more evolved selves. We live in this time where we're not being chased, and we don't have to wonder where food's coming from for so many of us, and what a blessing that is. So it's time that we need to actually elevate our body to match where we are physically, in our physical surroundings. But so much of that does predicate on what you want. Who do you want to be? What values do you hold? And do you actually want to live a life of joy? Because if so, you have to start moving away from negativity. One last thing I'll say. I was working, doing the Known Founder with an executive, decamillionaire, so successfully exited many businesses, great, wonderful human. And he and I were talking about what fills his Facebook feed. It's terrible news. And he finds himself getting angry a lot. So, what are your inputs? What are you currently feeding your mind? Again, the 3 practices, super, super easy. If you want to start choosing joy, Take your power back by taking back your mornings. Vertical alignment, go to verticalalignment.com, 21 free prompts. Just it will arrive in your inbox. It's super easy. Just take the time in the morning to do it, 10, 15 minutes or more. Do a workout, move your body, and then get sunlight early in the morning to kind of activate your circadian rhythm. It's wild how much the mind, body, soul all work together in harmony if we so choose. And we have the power of choice.